Hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode of The Legal Perspective. Today, I'll be speaking with Anne Ludford, who is a Learning and Development Coordinator at Citizens Advice. In this interview, we will be discussing her work at Citizens Advice, the role of law in the organisation, and how it can be a career option for law students. I hope you enjoyed this episode. So, hello Anna, thank you for coming to The Legal Perspective.
That's okay. Thank you for having me.
And just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your role at Citizen Advice and what are the sort of day-to-day responsibilities?
Yeah, I'm the Learning and Development Coordinator. So my overall role is to oversee the learning and development, so the training of mainly the volunteers that we use in our advice work, but also the staff, so the paid staff that work here. Quite a large organisation now. We are a group. So Citizens Advice is a national organisation, but it is separated into separate offices and separate groups. So our group is Staffordshire North and Stoke-on-Trent, and we're getting larger and larger. We now have main offices in Hanley and Newcastle under Lyme and Biddulph, Leek and Cheadle, and we have a small outreach at Kidsgrove office as well. So we have a service that is spread throughout those offices and also people that work remotely. So it's quite a large remit to oversee the training of the staff and the volunteers.
Yeah, and in terms of just Citizen Advice, if someone would ask you, like, can you explain what does the Citizen Advice do?
Yeah.
What would your kind of the simple answer would be?
Well, the simple answer is it's free advice. So the advice that Citizens Advice gives is free. There are, for us in our group, there is just one small part of the service that we make a charge for, which is our very specialised immigration advice. So if somebody wants help with one of the very large, complex immigration forms, we have to use our very specialised immigration staff here. So we do make a charge for that, because if you get it wrong, the problem is the Home Office send it back and you don't get your money back and you've just got to try again. So we have to make sure that that is correct. Apart from that, everything else is free of charge. So right the way through to going to court with somebody to help to defend a repossession or with a money order or something like that. It's all free of charge. So it's free, it's confidential. That is the bedrock of the service, that all of the advice that we give is confidential. It is impartial. So we will look at both sides of a situation and we will give impartial advice, and we will tell people what their rights are, but also what their responsibilities are. And it is independent. So we are a national charity, as I say before. We do get some sort of core funding from our local authority, but a lot of our funding comes from bids and sort of funders that we apply to get grants and things like that. So we are independent and able to point out issues and problems that arise with the government or with our local authority or whatever. And we have two main aims for Citizens Advice. So the main one is to provide advice to people for the problems that they face in their lives. And this is usually very practical, very common sense, down to earth advice. But also we have our research and campaign arm, which is sort of social policy. So Citizens Advice is a campaigning organisation. We collect evidence with our clients' permission. So we collect data, we collect evidence, and these feed into reports that go to policymakers and the government to try and influence the policies that they make, to point out flaws and where the system isn't working for some people and maybe it's detrimental to certain sectors of society. It's having a more profound effect on some people than other people. So, it's not hearsay, it's not our opinions as such, it is based on data. So that's both parts of the work that we do here.
Mm. In terms of like the legal aspect, what kind of impact do you think citizen advice has on the legal industry as a whole in terms of helping people and giving them advice on certain legal issues?
Well, the impact on clients, I think, is huge. You know, I mean, the demand for our services is non-stop. You know, we could offer a service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it would still, you know, be busy for us. So there is so much demand out there due to cuts in legal aid and things like that. You know, people, especially at the moment with the cost of living crisis, the last thing people can do is afford to pay for legal advice. And sometimes they don't need to. Sometimes they just need some basic practical guidance and help and support, and then they can go off and sort out their problems themselves. So in terms of the clients, I think it has enormous impact. You know, we know from the evidence that we gather that things like in our benefits work, we are helping people to access welfare benefits that maybe they weren't aware of, or they just hadn't got the skills to be able to do it themselves. And this can generate hundreds of pounds for them per week in extra income. You know, and if it's backdated, it can be thousands of pounds that they are owed in back pay. And in our debt work, you know, that has just gone massive at the moment. Just more and more people, unfortunately, getting into debt and can't afford to just pay their basic bills. So, you know, in the work that we have, we help people to restructure their income and their expenditure, look for better tariffs for their energy suppliers and their mobile phones or whatever, to try and help them to save money. And we can help to get debts written off. We can help people to challenge debts that maybe has gone beyond the statute limitation period. So maybe this creditor shouldn't even be chasing this debt. Maybe the debt isn't theirs and they hadn't realised that actually it's someone else's debt that they're not liable for. All sorts of aspects that people are just not aware of that we can help them with. So what I would say for citizens advice, it is very much more practical, down to earth, everyday advice that any of us could face in our lives. You know, if you have a rented property, you know, my landlord won't repair my roof, or I've got noisy neighbours, or I'm getting harassed by my neighbours. What can I do about it? You know, my employer hasn't paid me enough this week or this month, or they've asked me to work at a different location and I can't get there because I can't drive and I can't afford the bus fare. Really practical things that can think, well, you couldn't go to a solicitor with that. You know, that's not the kind of thing you're going to pay for legal advice for. But they need help. There are people out there that don't have the skills or the sort of network of support from family, friends, neighbours that maybe might have been there in the past. People are perhaps more isolated. Certainly people that are perhaps more marginalised, that don't have English as their first language. We help certainly in this area because we have translators that we can use. And we have more time, you know, and more experience of helping people with extra support needs to find the advice that they need.
Yeah, and what would you say is kind of the biggest challenge citizen advice faces?
Every day recently, more and more cost of living. You know, it's become a cliche, hasn't it? The cost of living crisis, which sort of minimises the impact it has, but more and more, because we do a telephone advice line, which is our frontline service. So that's what our volunteers will help us with. More and more phone calls every day, just people saying, I just cannot afford to buy food. I have no food left in the house and my benefit payment isn't for another fortnight. I just have no resources. You know, what can I do? Or I can't afford to pay my gas and my electric. So that primarily at the moment is the biggest factor that we're facing all the time. We are an agency, like a referral, a conduit, if you like, for other charities to issue food bank vouchers. So food bank vouchers, supermarket vouchers, fuel vouchers. We're getting more and more requests for that kind of social support. You know, you couldn't go to a solicitor for that. They're not going to issue you a food bank voucher, you know, or a fuel voucher. Because we get involved, because we want to do holistic advice. You know, we're not just going to issue, it can't just be a sticking plaster. You know, we want to try and get to the root of the problem. Well, why can't this person afford to put food on the table? What's gone wrong? Is it that they're not claiming enough benefits and the stuff out there they could claim? Is it that they're paying debts that they shouldn't be paying? Or we could reschedule those debts so that, you know, you pay it off for a longer period of time. All sorts of guidance and practical help that we can give to people that is going to help them through this crisis and hopefully let them develop resilience and the skills and knowledge to go off and in the future help themselves.
Yeah, you've mentioned working with different types of organizations that can give you support as well. Do you think there's the need for more awareness of how much more support there can be in terms of citizen advice, pairing up with other organizations and bringing more help towards people?
Yeah, I mean, we network with a lot of different partners. There are a lot of other charities that we work with. We work with local authorities, obviously, national partners. We work a lot with the financial regulation industry because we offer financial advice, debt advice. We are regulated because we do that. So there are lots and lots of different projects out there, different funders that we will network with, that we can draw on for resources, but also, you know, refer our clients onto. So, you know, we're not always the best person to give that advice. It might be that they'll get more support from a different group. So certainly things like employment advice, we can give basic, what we call generalist employment advice, but we will more than happy to refer them on to ACAS. So ACAS, the Arbitration and Conciliatory Service, they're the experts. You know, if you've got an employment problem, you can go onto their website, you can phone them free of charge and get expert employment advice. So we would work in partnership with them, you know, because if we can't do it, we'll refer them on to someone else. And there's all sorts of social support groups out there that can help our clients, or if they've got disabilities or ill health, there might be other people there like Macmillan and people like that that can also offer extra help and support to try and ease that burden from us. You know, we have so much demand that we can only, to start with, give an initial advice interview to somebody. If they need it, then we can bring them into our service. We have paid specialists that will take on a case. So our volunteers mainly work at the front line. So they'll do that initial interview, what we call a gateway. So it's a bit like in a hospital. If you go to the accident and emergency unit, apart from the receptionist, the next person that you see is a triage nurse. And the triage nurse assesses your problem. How urgent is it? You know, is it desperate? You're bleeding on the floor. Do you need to get seen straight away? Or are you going to sit in a chair for 3 hours and wait to be seen by someone else? That is the role of our volunteers. So they will either take a phone call or an email, because we get email advice, or they might see clients in the office. They'll do that initial interview with them and find out the problem and the urgency of it. And they'll find out what resources has the client got. Do they speak English? Do they read and write English? You know, it's no good giving somebody a fact sheet in English if they can't read English. So we've got to try and find out what resources and support they've got. And then we'll decide, well, what shall we do with them next? It could be we'll give them some advice, what initial advice, and they can follow that and go off and sort it out themselves. It might be that we'll refer them on to a different partner because we're not the best person. So, for example, if somebody wants to get a divorce, we can't act for that client. We can give them some very basic advice on what to do when you want to separate, but we can't take on a case and act for a client in a divorce case. We would refer them onto the Law Society website. You've got to look for a solicitor to help you to do that. Or it might be that if it's a benefit appeal or a debt case, we'll bring them into our service and we'll pass them on to our specialist teams. In our group, we have refugee and asylum teams because we are a dispersal area for refugee and asylum seekers. We've got immigration, we've got employment, housing, debt, benefits, consumer. So we've got a whole consumer helpline that we can refer people to. And we've got another office that deals with hate crime and victims of crime, so-called Staffordshire Victims Gateway. So they deal with restorative justice. So that's a whole other aspect of citizens advice that is part of our group as well. So we'll refer them in if we need to, and our paid staff will take them on as a case.
Wow, it's so incredible to just hear about so many different departments that Student Advice has, and
Yeah.
so many different advice they can give. And also in terms of actually for not even law students, but anyone who wants to kind of maybe volunteer, what are the sort of opportunities they could?
Yeah, absolutely. We need you.
Yeah, we need you. Yeah, can you talk a little about what kind of opportunities are there available for
Yeah,
volunteers,
yeah,
and maybe also someone who does volunteering work, but then maybe wants to move on and actually start a career at Citizen
yeah,
Advice.
yeah. Well, we've always taken volunteers. I mean, Citizens Advice started during the war. So it was set up by the government in 1939 to deal with all the problems that came about from having a war. You know, people were being bombed out of their homes and they had rationing and all sorts of things. So at the time, it was a government organisation. Over the years, that has changed, and we're now independent and an independent charity. But throughout all of that period, we've needed to use volunteers. So it's a bedrock of our service. So at the moment, we take a variety of volunteers. So we take what I would call community volunteers. So anybody can just get on our website and contact us to ask to come and volunteer with us. But we also take student placements. So that is the big thing now for me. Very much want to mine, you know, that rich seam of talent. You know, you're a law student. There are lots and lots of law students out there. We're blessed in that we've got two law universities. We've got Keele University and Staffordshire University in our locality with law degrees. So we want them and we take them. So for some years now, we've taken Keele third year law students on placement. And we've just branched into Staffordshire University and we're taking law students from there as well. But also on top of that, we're taking sixth form students. So, you know, 16, 17, 18-year-olds need work experience. It's very difficult for them to get it because the way the colleges are structured, they kind of give them, well, you know, you just need to do 24 hours or something. We don't take them on that basis. We've got this agreement with the colleges whereby they can get released from their timetable for a couple of days of training here. So we do group training. And then we just ask for a regular commitment of half a day a week. So in your timetable, if you've got half a day a week for at least 10 weeks, because we need that to train you, then you can come along and you'll be trained. So there's a combination of group training, like in the classroom, where there's lots of activities and quizzes and all sorts of things. There is some self-study. So it's all e-learning on a website. So we guide you through the e-learning to do. And of course, it's on the job. You know, you will learn by shadowing. So you'll shadow an experienced person to see how they do it. And then we will shadow you. So we'll make sure that you're fine with it and, you know, you're okay. And then you'll go solo. But all of our advice is checked. Not anything, not even a leaflet or a small bit of advice is given unless it's been checked by a supervisor first. So that's how we train the volunteers. So the primary part is getting the client experience. It's talking to real people, you know, and finding out what their problems are and finding out of their situation. And I think also it's that opportunity to deal with life in the raw. You know, certainly on the phones, you're getting people crying down the phone at you. You're getting them angry and frustrated, not at you personally, but at the system. You know, so the students maybe that don't have those life skills or that experience can get it in this safe, secure and supportive environment. Mainly what they do is they do the initial interview and they follow a very basic script and some basic questions, find out what the problem is. Then we say, okay, we'll get some advice, we'll get it checked, and then we'll phone you back. So I'm not going to put a student on the spot by having them sitting there with headphones on thinking, I don't know what to say here to this person. You know, I've got this person crying down the phone at me and I have no idea what to say. We don't do that because it doesn't do anybody any good. So we calmly and carefully get the information first, end the call. We've got an information system. There's a public site that anybody can use. we will use that, or there's a higher level site that we can use as well. Get the advice, get it checked by a supervisor, discuss it with them, and then we call the client back. We say, hi, this is Mario from Stoke-on-Trent Advice Line. I've got some advice for you now. And you'll deliver the advice. And we always say, well, try that. And if that doesn't work, come back to us. Yeah. And they'll come back in whatever format, either on the phone, email, or come and visit us. So that's the work that the volunteers, and that's the work that the students do. So certainly for things like our placements, the students come to us just for half a day a week for 12 weeks for a university student. And, you know, within 2 to 3 sessions of coming of the training, we're going to put you on the phones and you're going to start to get that client experience. But really, in a 3-hour session, which is half a day, you probably only do one phone call. We're not a call centre. We're not saying you've got to be there getting call. You're not. It takes time. Yeah,
It's
you've got to
about getting
explore the
there.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, it's more about actually giving the right type of advice, and not just saying, okay, here you go, and this is what I found out. Actually, it's
Yeah.
actually about making sure that it's actually accurate advice
Yeah.
and actually helpful to the person, right?
Yeah, and they can follow it.
Yeah.
You know, that they need to know in their own minds that they can do what you're telling them to do.
Mhm.
And I think the experience for the student is sometimes there is nothing we can do, you know, and that can feel really, really hard, because most people that come to us want to help. You know, it's inherent in our nature to want to help people. And unfortunately, certainly things with like food vouchers, there is a limit. You know, the people that issue the food bank vouchers say to us, you can only issue, say, 5 in a 6-month period, maybe. And sometimes we've reached that limit. And unfortunately, the volunteer has to say to the client, I'm sorry, we can't issue any more vouchers for you. And that is really difficult, you know, or there's nothing in this situation. Unfortunately, maybe they do owe the money. Maybe they've got in touch with us to say, well, you know, I've had this letter that says I owe £5,000 and I don't owe £5,000. Maybe when we look into it, well, actually, unfortunately, you do. But okay, let's look at how we can help you with that. Can we help you to structure that payment, or could we see if there's any benefits that you could claim to help you to pay that? So, you know, sometimes it is difficult because people have very challenging and difficult lives even before they pick up the phone. And we haven't a magic wand. We're not going to take that away from them. You know, we can just help a little bit. And what I say to all of the students is, you know, just listening with compassion and kindness. You know, I think that that can be missing in society, that we are just a bit kinder to each other. So if a student can just listen to a client, treat them with respect and compassion and kindness, you know, if we can't do anything else, we've given them that dignity just for that small bit of time. We might be the only person in their life that has ever done that, you know, and we might be the only person that they talk to that week. So I think we have to remind students that they may feel they haven't done very much, like they're not grandiose things. You know, we're not talking about, I'm going to win you this compensation claim and get you £10,000. We're not talking about things like that, you know, but just a small thing can have a massive impact on a client. And, you know, students should never underestimate the impact that they have had on a client just by listening and being respectful and kind to them.
I also just want to say, like, for any law students who are actually watching this, get involved, talk to certain advice, talk to what and any type of opportunities that may be available to you, and just get involved as much as you can. It's a really invaluable experience, and you actually learn so much. I'm actually going to start. Well, I'm actually on the training scheme, and I'm going to be starting soon as a volunteer with citizen advice.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, good. Yeah. We're looking forward to having you and many more.
Of course. And also just touching in terms of law students who may want to get involved. I know you said that they should not never be discouraged with anything that is not in terms of the expectations. But what do you think are the sort of the core skills that you're looking for and that you really need to have in this type of role?
The ability to connect with a person and to put your own ego to one side for a bit and just to listen and try and empathize, to imagine yourself in their situation. We never judge. That is the one thing about Citizens Advice. We do not judge. We might feel exasperated at times or frustrated at times as to why that client has done that. We try not to express that, obviously. So we try and remain neutral. But you've just got to imagine that for some people, their lives are horrible, and it's just about the ability to listen. You do need, certainly for us, you need to be able to read and write English and speak English well, because it is a communication device. And certainly it is about being able to understand. And sometimes, obviously, the people that we get have very strong accents. It could even be a local accent. It could be a Potteries accent, Staffordshire or whatever. So it is being able to just listen and write, take notes, try and think. We do have questions that we ask, but you're trained what are questions to find out information. And the ability, I mean, students are a dream. I have no problem with students at all. If you're a degree student, you've got the skills. Yeah, you know about being able to interrogate a system to find information because you've done that. That's part of your degree.
Yeah.
So IT skills are, definite now. When I started many years ago, it was all paper and pen, and literally our information books were books. Everything is now online. So students are a dream because you're brought up with that. About using IT systems and internet and things like that. So just the ability to read something and pull out salient points, skim read it and pull it out, and be kind, professional and kind is what we need. We don't look for academic qualifications as such. Certainly from our community volunteers who maybe are not students, we take them from all walks of life. It doesn't matter. People with disabilities, people that are retired, people that are working part-time but maybe want to change career. As long as they meet our basic requirements, have got some IT skills, can read, write and speak English, and have that availability. So we do need that regularity of attendance because everything changes quite quickly. Benefits and systems and procedures can change. So sporadic attendance is not good for us. We do need a regular commitment. I say students, we get it because you're on placement. So you've got to come for 10, 12 weeks or so. Community volunteers, it's open-ended. We'll just take them as long as they want to come. We've got some that have been here 20 years or more. I started as a volunteer. So I was working full-time for the local authority before I came to Citizens Advice many years ago. But I wanted a career change. And at the time, we did an evening clinic in one of our offices. So I worked in the evenings as a volunteer advisor, and then gradually saw that that's what I wanted to do and left my previous job and started as an advisor with Citizens Advice, got a paid job with them, and have gradually worked through all the different teams, so debt specialist, benefit specialist, community outreach, and been in training now for sort of 10 years or so. And most of us here, to be honest, most of the paid staff have started as volunteers. And if I have one bit of advice myself, it is definitely that. Come and do some volunteer work first, then you're on the job, and if a position pops up, you're there straight away. And I think quite often it's easier to recruit from within than externally because we know you know the systems. So definitely volunteer.
Yeah, and I also have spoken to a lot of solicitors, barristers, and even law students who express that basically in terms of the studies, they're really not sure if they want to go into a legal career, but they're still like giving advice or just being in that type of scenario.
Mm.
And I think my advice also would be like, even solicitors have told me, like, there is no one option for you. You can do so many different stuff, and just try even volunteering and see if you like the job, and maybe that could be your option. There's
Yeah,
so many different options that you can really move into, and it's not just
yeah,
having one type of outlook.
yeah,
It's good to have a plan, but
Mm.
we all know like plans sometimes don't work out, so
yeah.
it's good to keep your options open.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I am 100% certain that any employer would rather see that you filled your time with some volunteer work than nothing at all. The
Mm.
worst thing is to have gaps on your CV.
Mhm.
Yeah, just do it. It doesn't matter who you volunteer for. Could be something entirely different. But showing it's all part of like the work ethic. It's showing that you've got that drive and self-discipline to get yourself up, get yourself out of bed, get out, turn up, socialize with people. You've got that ability to talk to other people, to fit in a work environment. That's what an employer is looking for. They don't really want, unless it's a sort of the creative field, they don't really want mavericks. They want people that are going to fit in because you're no trouble then. Yeah, I know I can train you and slot you in and you're going to do the job that I want you to do because I'm going to pay you to do that job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's basic common sense really, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, we take lots of volunteers here. We take them on as paid staff, and then sometimes they move on. They come to us for a little while they're looking around for different jobs in the legal profession, and then they move on and they get one, and that's fine. We're very used to that. We're sort of a stepping stone or a staging post for them to go on and do greater things. That's no problem. Charity pay, probably can't compare to commercial sectors. But people come into it for different reasons. It is a different environment. It is what I would call a more grassroots, softer, kinder environment. And it's certainly, if you're interested in things like social justice, it's very much that kind of environment too, because there is this campaigning part to us that is data driven, and also client stories and things like that. That we look at the human side of people's policies.
Mhm. Well, yeah, and I think that really concludes all of my questions. I want to thank you so much for coming on, Anne.
It's okay.
You've given us so much invaluable advice, really, just so much that we can learn. And again, all of the law students, get involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, get involved. Yeah. You really do not know where it can lead. I've had so many students. We've taken legal students now for about 7 years or so, and we're there for a reference. If you need a reference, if you've done your training with us and you've stayed for a little while, you're going to get a reference. And obviously they're good references. We're not going to offer a duff reference. And citizens' advice is very well respected. Within the legal profession, it is very well respected as a professional organization. We don't have the resources that some of the legal profession has, but that doesn't make us any less professional. Yeah. Most of us that are working here have got degrees, higher degrees, and a lot of work experience on the job. So yeah, get involved.
Yeah.
And hopefully on your page, you're going to give people contact details for me, are you? So they can sign up.
Of course I will. And anything for you, Anne. Of course. Yeah. And again, thank you so much for giving us so much insights. People get involved. I'll include all the links and contacts to Anne. And yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mario, for inviting me on.
Thank you so much for coming, Anne.